Magnus Carlsen has black pieces in this position against the 5 times world chess champion Vishy Anand, and white just played the move f6, threatening this horrible double check, rook to g7 and then queen h7 is unstoppable. But this is the most beautiful game that Magnus Carlsen has ever played in classical chess, so he's making the move that is gonna blow your mind here. Let me explain. What's up, chess player, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. The newest version of Chess Base, which is the most professional program for chess players, has this incredible feature that we never had before. It's called Beauty Medals. And what it does, it sorts all of the games according to how beautiful they are. And now I have here all of the 6,000 games that Magnus Carlsen played according to the newest database, and I have sorted it according to the beauty. And now you see here the first 3 are incredibly weird. The first one is the Rapid game. The second one is bullet chess. I mean, that's crazy, bullet chess, and he plays one of the most beautiful games in his entire life. And the third one is actually blindfolded game. I mean, that's crazy. But this one, the game against Vishy Anand, is actually the most beautiful one Magnus Carlsen has ever played in classical chess, and that's exactly the one I want to show you today. Even though the game is incredibly complicated, Magnus Carlsen has here 98.3% accuracy. Just crazy, absolutely crazy. Let's take a look at it. It's day number 11 of my Journey to Grandmaster challenge, and I decided I need some inspiration, and I can get it from learning from the best players in chess history. Well, who can be better than Magnus Carlsen himself playing against Vishy Anand? That is an incredible game. And what is even more amazing, this game has been played at the Grand Chess Classic tournament in 2015. That is exactly the same tournament I'm gonna take part in just a few weeks, and Magnus Carlsen will be there as well. So I decided I absolutely have to show you this game. So Magnus Carlsen played as black, and the game started with d4 f5. That is not typical for Magnus. He is playing the Dutch defense. He wanted to just avoid the opening theory, and that is something Magnus does so often throughout his chess career. He says that I'm just playing better than you guys at chess. I don't care about the opening theory. I'm gonna just reach some playable position and then I'm gonna outplay you. Let's see what happened in this case. So he played a so-called Stonewall Dutch. Stonewall is this pawn structure when basically you have a very solid pawn structure on the light squares as black, and then you're trying not to allow your opponent to come through and be rock solid, and then attack, use this E square for your knight and go on. So let's see what happened. But Magnus Carlsen is not playing that to say, well, I'm solid here, you're not gonna beat me. Magnus Carlsen never plays for a draw. So instead he wants to use this structure to get to white's position to go forward and attack. First of all, he plays here queen to e7. So this move is a very smart for prophylaxis. By playing b3, Anand prepared this idea of bishop a3. Because if you notice, all of these pawns are on the light squares. In this situation, this light square's bishop is pretty much stupid. He cannot do anything for a long time. But the dark square's bishop is a very important piece because it's the only one that controls the dark squares. So it's a very important principle to remember. You don't want to allow your opponent to exchange such a bishop. So that's why Magnus Carlsen plays queen to e7, stopping the bishop a3 idea. Now it's much more difficult for white to exchange those bishops. So Anand plays knight e5, just trying to cement this knight in the center, saying that, well, I'm the first one to get there, the knight is very strong in the center, and moreover, if you play knight to e4, then maybe I even have the move f3, just kicking your knight away, and yeah, that is basically destroying black's main idea. But let's see how Magnus figured it out. Knight b2 d2, and first of all he plays the move a5. He wants to create some counterplay. That's probably one of the most important principles in chess. You always want to get your counterplay. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner, if you're at 1000 level, or if you're Magnus Carlsen. If you want to succeed in chess, you need to find your own counterplay. It doesn't matter whether you're playing white or black. You can't just sit there and wait for your opponent to come after you and destroy you. No, you need to find your play. You need to find your plan. You need to go into some kind of an attack. So Magnus is playing that move a5. That's very useful, first of all, to stop white's idea to expand on the queen side, but Magnus went further than that, so let's see what he did. Bishop went to b2, knight b2 d7. Of course, Magnus follows the golden development principle, which is one piece, one move. So that is essential. You want to develop all of your pieces, you want to bring all of your forces into the game, into the battlefield, and then you're ready to play against your opponent. Otherwise, your opponent is just gonna destroy you because he's gonna have like 10 pieces fighting and you are gonna have just 3 of them constantly making moves. That is a very bad strategy. Instead, you want to bring all of them. So knight goes b2 d7, queen goes to c2, and now Magnus plays the move a4. So essentially he wants to create those weaknesses. He says, well, if you want to grab an extra pawn, you can actually do it. I have no way to take it at least immediately back. But he says that's going to be there forever. Those are the double pawns. You need to use an entire queen just to protect this vulnerable pawn, and that is a very good thing for me. So Vishu says, okay, I don't care about your pawns, I have my own plan, I want to cement my knight on e5, so I'm playing knight d2 f3. But now remember that we talked about that move f3 as a potential idea for white just to kick this knight from e4 away. Well, now that the knight is standing there, blocking this square, f3 is no longer possible, and Magnus uses this exact moment to play knight e4 himself. White plays the move e3, trying to make this pawn structure more solid, and Magnus goes for a3, trying to get even more space on the queen side. So that is where he has some upper hand, and he's trying to use that. But the position is getting close now, bishop to c3, and remember, you never want to exchange such a knight against this bishop, because the position is extremely close. I often say that bishop is stronger than the knight, and you absolutely don't want to exchange the bishop for a knight, and that is absolutely true. But chess is a very complicated game, and sometimes it happens that the main principles, they don't work that way, because in the open positions, yes, the bishops are very, very strong, they're controlling the entire diagonal, they're much stronger than the knights. But here, if all of the diagonals are closed, that is a completely different case, and knights might be even stronger than the bishop, so you don't want to exchange it just like that. Instead, Magnus Carlsen decides to exchange the knight here on e5, because that is basically white's main piece, and notice that black still has some development problems. I mean, you don't have enough space as black for all of your pieces. So what do you do in this case? You exchange a few pieces so that there is enough space for everything. For example, this bishop has absolutely no moves to go, but now after knight takes, bishop goes to d7, and once again, black is not afraid of this exchange knight against the bishop, because this bishop, like I said, is not that efficient in terms of those light square pawns. And so Magnus is okay for it. But white still goes for it and plays knight takes d7. In my opinion, I mean, I would never make such move because this knight is golden on e5, and you see the engine is also not a big fan of it. But Vishay had a very concrete idea afterwards. He wanted to get more space on the queen side, continuing this pawn chain with the move c5, and then maybe even preparing the idea of playing b4, b5. So Magnus just goes back, and then Vishay continues with the move b4. And now the same principle applies. We need to get some counterplay. Now, white is playing on the queen side. Now it's very clear he wants to play b5, prepare it, go for it, then create a weakness, then maybe use the b file to go here, and so on. The question is, how do you create counterplay as black? What do you do? Where can you play? If you really understand the importance of having a counterplay, you're going to become such a stronger chess player. So Magnus plays here the move h5. He understands that he has more pieces looking towards a king side, and he can create some dangerous ideas here. So you see, h5 is a very good move. The alternative was to play g5, but pretty much with the same idea. Now, there are no direct threats, and that is something you also need to understand. So many stronger chess players, they are not like creating an immediate threat right here and right now, otherwise I'm not gonna play it. No, they are just building that pressure step by step, just going forward, bring one piece, bring another piece, and then maybe some threats are gonna present themselves. That is how it works. Also, it applies pressure, because imagine you're playing from the white side here, you're playing against Magnus Carlsen, and he makes a move such as h5. You're thinking, well, I have absolutely no idea what is coming, but I feel some pressure. I feel that it's dangerous for me. So I have to do something about it. And that's exactly what Vishy did. He played the move bishop to e1. But the problem with that is it's a move back, and normally you never want to go back, and that is what I recommend you to do. Never go back unless you absolutely have to do that. The problem with that is that the bishop is no longer on c3. Whenever your opponent moves a certain piece somewhere, you need to ask yourself two questions. First of all, what that bishop is doing on e1 that it wasn't doing on c3 before? Well, it controls this diagonal, which might be useful in the defense. Okay, you take it into account. The second question you should ask yourself, what the bishop is not doing anymore that it was doing on c3. Well, it doesn't control the square e5 anymore, and that is exactly the moment when Magnus Carlsen uses it. Immediately he attacks in the center. That is the golden principle here. Your opponent attacks on the side, answer in the center. You see that Magnus combines those counterplay in terms of king side and the center simultaneously, because, well, the more active you get, the better. Of course, you need to be careful to make sure that your king is still secure, and Magnus succeeded with that, but still, that's not an excuse not to be active. You need to go forward, you need to create pressure, you need to make life more difficult for your opponent. That's the ultimate goal in chess, to make your opponent's life as miserable as possible. What Black is trying to achieve with this move? Well, the most obvious idea is just to take on d4 to remove this very important defender from e3, and then we can go on with the move f4, maybe protecting this knight first, or in every case we are going to have more opportunities here on the king side with the absence of this move e3. So Vishy decides to exchange that pawn on e5 instead, but that also has some advantages for Black, because now this bishop becomes a very strong piece, whereas both of white bishops are extremely passive there. And, well, you of course can exchange this guy, but that is only gonna make it worse for you, so there's a very difficult situation. Although the objective evaluation of the position is actually fine for white, but it's about these psychological issues. It's really not about what the computer says. Who cares? It's about whether it's simpler to play as white or black, whether it's simpler to create the threats as black or counter the threats as white. And I would argue that's almost always simpler to attack than to defend, especially if you have a lot of activity, if you have those ideas. And notice that initial idea that white had to attack here on the queen side is somehow way too slow, not dangerous at all, and you already can feel some pressure against white's king on g1. White plays rook to d1 because the rook is under attack, and of course you want to bring the rook here, maybe to stop the move d4. Queen goes to e6. You never want to have your queen on the same file with your opponent's rook. That's always very dangerous. For example, an immediate threat was to play bishop takes e4, pawn takes, and then queen takes e4 using this annoying pin. So queen goes away, f3, and knight goes back to f6. Well, yes, now white got rid of this very annoying knight on e4, but it comes at a cost, namely the pawn on e3 is now very vulnerable, and yeah, playing e4 is also not that simple. So white plays the move bishop h3. That is basically a multi-purpose move, something I always recommend you try. So first of all, that creates a direct threat, but also it's been on this pawn on f5, so Vishy is trying to open up the center. Remember, he has a pair of bishops. When you have a pair of bishops, and your opponent doesn't, obviously, then you want to open up the center. You want to open up the position overall so that your bishops are really powerful. That is what we have talked a little bit earlier. If the position is closed, you can never make use of your bishops. So Vishy is attacking that pawn on f5 and prepares the move e4 because of this pin, the f-pawn cannot take it. So black plays g6 and e4 is coming. But there is a wonderful move here, and I really want you to pause the video for a second and find this amazing move for black because it's an incredibly instructive moment. But before I reveal the answer to you and a crucial lesson you need to learn from here, 30 seconds of extremely useful advertisement to help you skyrocket your chess. Imagine how cool it would be to play chess without ever having opening troubles again. What if I told you I could teach you all openings you will ever need in just 10 days? You get lifetime access to more than 110 pure value video tutorials, almost 100 practical tasks to apply your knowledge immediately into practice, 30 plus bonus videos to dive 10 times deeper, as well as private community where all questions you might ever have are answered daily. Get the $200 limited time discount with the link in the description and forget about all opening pain once and for all. Let's face the truth. The situation feels horrible for black. This pawn on f5 is attacked 3 times. This rook is open, this pawn is pinned, and we have only 2 defenders. It's very difficult to deal with it. But Magnus says, I don't care about this pawn. I'm gonna create my counterplay. And that is connected with this pawn a3. If I can push it forward, that is an incredible force, which basically wins the game immediately. The problem is there is the a2 pawn which is blocking it. So I need to just get rid of that pawn. How to do that? Well, my queen is already attacking it, so I can just grab it. The problem with that is the pawn is protected, so you can never take it unless the pawn is unprotected again. So how to make it possible? Well, I can just play bishop to b2, blocking that queen, and now the pawn is under attack. That is an amazing move because it's a double attack as well. Remember that multi-purpose principle, very, very important in chess, because not only this pawn is under attack, now, also this pawn on e4 is under attack, so there is absolutely no time, for example, for white to defend that pawn on a2. Bishop says, well, I don't have any time to protect the a2 pawn, so I'm gonna go with my attack. I'm gonna take on f5 because, well, I have so many active pieces now. This rook is incredibly active, this one, this bishop is active, supporting that pawn, attacking the queen. The queen is active as well on c2, so everything is beautiful. I just need to open up the position. So that is what happens. Both players are going for their plans. And now it's a question, who is going to be the first one to create a very dangerous threat? That is normally how it works in such a double-edged position. Either it's going to be white who's going to create the dangerous threats to deliver a checkmate first, or it's going to be black who's going to create a threat of just promoting the queen. So that is a race basically now, who is going to be faster. Let's see what happens here. White makes a move here, bishop to f2, which is actually very logical. You want to connect your rooks, you want to control that first rank. The problem with that, it's just too slow. We just discovered that it's very important for white to be as fast as possible, and bishop f2 unfortunately is not fast enough. The right move was to play rook f2, because this move is actually pinning that bishop and creates a threat of bishop c3, basically winning that a3 pawn, because it's very difficult for black to deal with it. For example, rook a to d8, we can just exchange it, go bishop to c3, and then white is absolutely fine. But that's counterintuitive and absolutely not easy to find. So instead, bishop f2 has been played, and now black plays g5. That is an incredible move, very, very instructive moment for you, because notice that this move is blocking basically 2 of white's pieces, or maybe even 3 if you count this rook on f1, because now everybody is staring at that pawn on f5. If you just remove it for a second, that would be fantastic. This queen can immediately go to g6, this bishop can go to e6 or to f5 to support the queen. That would be just a dream for white. But now that this pawn is there, it's blocking all of white pieces, that actually helps black because the king feels much more secure. White makes another incredibly reasonable move, rook f to e1. What could be better than that to get the open file here? And well, we are controlling both central files as white. That is fantastic for the rooks. But unfortunately, once again, those general principles not always work because of the dynamics of the situation. That's too slow for white because black just needs 2 tempi here, bring the queen away and play a2, and then basically the pawn is almost there. So white just doesn't have time for such a move as rook to e1 and yeah, trying to be active here. Let's see why. Black just plays queen to f7. That is another multi-purpose move because first of all it frees the road for this a pawn, but also it brings the queen back to the defense, where it's going to be of course very useful. Try to make those white threats not that dangerous. Now Vishy doesn't want to stop. He plays rook to e6. He wants to go forward. He wants to attack and create dangerous threats. And it also blocks this queen here, which is a very useful thing. So, well, right now a2 is difficult to play because the bishop is hanging. Magnus plays here knight to g4, and you see chess.com says it's a mistake, but actually it's a very tricky move from a practical point of view, and that is actually what matters the most. You don't really care about what the computer says, you don't know it anyway in the real game, you care about making your opponent's life more difficult. And knight g4 creates a lot of pressure on white's position. This bishop is hanging, white decides to take it, takes, and then Vishy plays all of the right moves up to here, rook to g6, king goes to h7, another great move because you don't want to get to this diagonal where the king is going to be in trouble, and additional opportunity of rook h6 is possible. And now Vishy makes a mistake, a tactical one. He finds a beautiful combination, as it seems. He sacrifices the rook here with rook to d7. Now, there is absolutely no way for black to continue except for queen takes, otherwise the queen is pinned, it's going to be lost, so we have to take. And now, bishop plays this move f6, and now we are coming to the beginning of this video. Please feel free to pause this video and find the move, because, well, that's an amazing move here, absolutely. I hope you have found it. So when you try to find the best move in every possible chess position, you always start with the most active opportunities: checks, captures, and threats. And here, the only check which is available for black is queen to d1, which feels amazing because it's a queen sacrifice, but it's actually the best move in the position, and that's exactly what Magnus played. Well, like I mentioned in the beginning, rook g7 is a huge threat that you absolutely have to stop. You don't have absolutely any time for a2, you're gonna get checkmated. But queen d1 does it. It deflects the queen away from this diagonal, and that's exactly what black needs, even at the price of an entire queen. Queen goes away, well, it has to go away, otherwise we just win it, and then we take this rook. After queen goes back to d3, back to the same diagonal, given a check, we just go away with king to h6, and there is absolutely no threats that white can create, and that a2, a1 plan is absolutely unstoppable. Remember what we have talked earlier, it's a question who is going to be faster, whether it's going to be white with creating checkmating threats, but unfortunately for white, there is absolutely no threats he can create against the king, or it's going to be black with creating a threat of promoting the queen. Well, we see that the later one happens, and now there is no way for white to stop the promotion. White plays h4 because that is the only way to somehow try to get to the king, but black just takes en passant. By the way, never forget about this very important rule in chess, and white just resigns because, like I said, absolutely no plan to stop a2, a1. Now, you can actually play a game like that, but to achieve that, you need to think like a grandmaster, and in this video I have prepared for you a step-by-step process how to do that in your own games, which I have discovered through many years of my chess career, and I'm ready to share it with you completely for free.